Are you thinking about getting a smart speaker, but you're not sure if it's the right thing for you? For sure, this is the kind of situation where you're going to need some information in order to make the right choices. So let's talk some tech and we'll get you the information that you need, and I'll explain why I'm laughing. It's been an evening. All right, so you're thinking about getting a smart speaker, but you're not really sure whether or not it's the right choice for you, how to make that decision. I'm going to walk through all the information that you need in order to get you to that right decision for you, because the reality is there is no single answer for everybody, right? It's going to depend on you and what you need out of it and what you're looking for. So we're going to get you from here to there as quickly as possible. But first, I just have to explain why I've been laughing. So I just did an almost hour show thinking I was live, because I hit a button by mistake and everything went on. And so it looked like I was live, but evidently it never actually connected. So Murphy is the only one who's heard this show so far. Which is why I've been laughing. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're going to restart. So here we go. We're going to talk about whether or not you are going to get a smart speaker. But first of all, like we always do, we're going to start off by level setting, right? So what the heck are we talking about? So a smart speaker is very much like a traditional speaker in that it provides audio and in some cases video. We'll get to that in a minute. What is different about it is it has an onboard smart assistant. So that would be either the Amazon one, the Google one, or the Apple one. Maybe on a flea market you could find the Microsoft one, but that's pretty much over. So we won't talk about that too much. But the idea is that you can do all the things you can do with a smart assistant with the speaker, including like getting answers, but also controlling things and all that kind of good stuff. So that is the basic thing that we are talking about. Just to make it clear, so there are traditional speakers like we all grew up with, well, most of us grew up with, plug it into an outlet, connect it to your stereo or your TV or whatever, and get the sound. Now there's also the option of Bluetooth speakers. Now, Bluetooth speakers are not smart speakers, right? So Bluetooth speakers connect wirelessly to your various devices and do get the audio and play it for you, but it doesn't have that added feature of being smart and having a smart assistant on board. And that may be all you need, and we'll talk about that as we go through too. And then, of course, the smart speaker, which I just explained. And just so that we're all kind of picturing the same thing, let me get my name off the screen. Let's go ahead and take a look at the different options that are out there. Let's bring this up. Okay, so this is the Amazon selection, and they've got a bunch of different shapes and sizes. You may remember that the first one was sort of like that Pringles can type of thing, but over time they have changed the shape and the size. You can get ones that, do different things. Like, so these are just basic ones, but this one actually has a little clock on it. I have this one. It's very handy. You can also get them that have different skins on them, or you can just get skins either through Amazon or third parties. So you've got that different option. And then you've got things like the Google. So they've got the different Nest ones. This is the big one. They also have the mini version, which kind of looks like a very rounded hockey puck. Murphy, do not play with that toy right now. No love. Later. I know. He's like, oh God, she's going through this again. So there's that kind of thing. And then there is the Apple version. Now, right now, it looks like they're only selling the mini through Apple, but according to what I'm reading online, it looks like the full-size version is going to be out in time for the holidays, it looks like. So those are your basic options. Now, is that like the world's most pathetic sound? So there are other... there's another level to it. Now, some people would say that technically the ones with the screens are not smart speakers, but they are, because what they are for me is they're a smart speaker that has a screen attached to it. So again, Amazon has a extensive collection of these. With most of these on the Amazon side, it is the smart speaker with a Fire tablet of some sort attached to it, just so you know. In the Google World, there's a couple of different versions, again, different sizes. But again, it's just basically what they are is they're a tablet attached to a smart speaker. So, and we'll get into why that's helpful, but basically it gives you the benefit of not only getting information, but also in some cases seeing it. So just as a silly example, but like if you were to ask it, what is an elephant? Any of the smart speakers will describe an elephant to you. If you have one that has a display on it, it will also show you pictures of an elephant. Now, it's a very small example, but you get a feel for the type of thing. So same thing with the weather, right? If you ask for the temperature or the weather, any of the smart speakers will answer that question, but the ones with the screens will show you maybe a weather map or the next, 8 hours of weather or the next 10 days or whatever, depending on how you get things set up. So there are definitely benefits to that. And we'll talk about some concerns and things around that kind of thing. As far as I know, right now, Apple has not released one with a screen, but with Apple, you never know. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so let us come back here. Hello again. And so next we're going to talk about the benefits and concerns that people have or find with these types of devices. But for those of you who are just joining for the first time, hello, my name is Kathleen. I'm here as your tech coach. The short version of the story is technology is my day gig. It's also my hobby. Oops, wrong one. So I tend to be the person that people come to when they have a question or a comment in my world. Not a comment, question or a concern, or they're looking for advice, if they're having a problem with their devices or their technology. And over time, I've ended up helping their friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, which made me realize not everybody has a resource. So that's why we're here. I'm here to try to help you with your technology decisions, if you're just curious about it, that type of thing, if you want to know what options are available. So you can always reach out if you have a question, if you have something that you want me to cover on a show, a particular topic or whatever. You can go to yourtechcoach.net. There's a contact form there, and you can let me know. If you're having a problem, I'll do my best to help you. And you can also buy one-on-one services if you want. So I can help you as much as possible remotely, which very often is a lot. So there we go. We have that covered. So welcome. Glad to have you here. All right. So let's get into this. For Murphy's sake, it's again. All right. So let's talk about the benefits first of all, right? Start off with the happy stuff. There are a lot of benefits to having a smart speaker in your world because in more than just giving you sound, it can actually do things for you. It can help you. So obviously, absolutely, music is one of them, music, podcast, audiobooks, all that kind of stuff. But instead of just having that in the room that you're in, if you go the route of having multiple speakers that you can group together, you could have that sound go throughout the house. And you can choose to just play it where you are or to have it play throughout the house. That's it. As you're telling it to do the music thing or the audio thing, you can tell it how you want to do it. It's a really nice and easy way to get music or content all throughout the house. So like, if you're cleaning or you're moving from room to room, but you want to, keep listening to your audiobook or your podcast or whatever, it's really nice to be able to just have it there and not have to stop at some place and start at someplace else. So from a convenience standpoint, it's very nice. I will say that that's something I enjoy and use a lot. But of course, that would require more than one of them, and you'll start off with one. So you can also set it so that it will wake you up to your favorite music or podcast or whatever. So you can set it up so that, wake me at this time and do this thing. So that's very handy. And that's sort of just as a general thing, one of the big benefits is that you can set up these things called routines, reminders, that type of thing. So you can do them as an individual thing, right? You can say, hey, remind me to pick up, Timmy at 3 p.m. And you'd probably want to have it tell you that earlier. So if you got to pick up Timmy at 3 p.m., you might want to say, remind me at 20 to 3 to go pick up Timmy. And then it would remind you. Because you don't want to leave Timmy waiting, how he gets upset about that. So anything like that, it's really helpful. But then you can also combine these. Now, the different tools or the different speakers may call them different things, but basically if you think of it as a routine, so you could build it so that it does certain things together. For example, when you wake up in the morning, first of all, it'll wake you up, right? Then maybe, it'll wake you up with the music that you like or the podcast or whatever, like we talked about. And then after a certain amount of time, maybe it'll start to tell you what the weather is today. And then maybe it'll tell you what the traffic is. And then maybe you want it to go back to playing the news of the day, the news headlines, or you want to switch from the music to your podcast. So you can set it up to say, do this thing, do this thing, do this thing. You give it one command and it's going to do all those things for you, right? Because one will trigger the next, will trigger the next. And you have total control over what it does and how it does and where, how it's doing it. Other side of the coin, right? When you want to go to sleep, you can tell it, you can set up a trigger word and that will lock the doors, if you have those locks. Turn off the lights downstairs, turn on the lights in your bedroom, maybe adjust the temperature if you have a smart thermostat, and do all these things with one command. All these things just magically start to happen for you. It's a very Star Trek Jetsons world kind of feeling when you start to do these things. You're like, wow, this is nice. I mean, not that you're not doing these things manually yourself, but there's a certain convenience to being able to say, do this and have it all taken care of for you. So that is a big thing, which then leads me to my next one, which for me is a big one: accessibility. Anybody with a short or a long-term accessibility need will find benefit very often in these types of devices, or these devices combined with other things. So for example, every so often my back decides it doesn't like me anymore, and I spend a couple of months laying on the sofa crying, basically. But that's not the point. The point is that when this happens, because I have smart plugs around, I can turn the lights on, turn the lights off without having to get up. And let me tell you, when it hurts to move, these kinds of things are lifesavers. They're awesome. Also, like if somebody has, vision problems and maybe they rely on audio for their news, for entertainment, whether it's books or whatever, these devices, like that's a slam dunk. That is a strong point, and they all do this for you. So that is a really handy thing. I know people who have family members who are, limited mobility or whatever, but for whatever reason, maybe they can't get to the grocery store, they can't go shopping as often as they like to or at all. So people have set them up with, and yes, I've helped, they've set them up with a smart speaker of some sort, and then that is connected somehow to that person who helps them out a lot. Sometimes it's simple as they share a list, right? So the person who with the need can say, add whatever to my shopping list. And then the person who helps them out when they're ready to go shopping or whatever can check and say, oh, they want milk, they need stamps, whatever, and then they can go pick them up. So it's a nice convenience kind of thing. Also, if the person who needs the help knows that their friend or family member or assistant is out doing things and they're like, I forgot to tell them I need this, you can add it to the list verbally and it will show up. So while they're looking at the list while they're shopping, they'll see another thing come in. They're like, oh, okay. And they also want me to go and pick up Benadryl, or whatever it is. So it's timely, right? It saves that person an extra trip. It gets the person what they need. And it's not something that they have to remember to tell them or whatever, because as they think of things, they can just go ahead and throw it on the list. There's a lot more. The solutions that you will find for a smart device for a particular accessibility issue depends on the person's needs, but you'll find a lot of different combinations of things that you can use for that. So for an accessibility kind of thing, these things are definitely game changers. Then there's the basic stuff of answering questions, right? So you're watching something, and you're like, I can't remember that lead actor's name. The device will tell you. Or, hey, that actor so-and-so, they were in this other thing that with this topic, and they're like, oh yeah, this is the name of it. So that kind of stuff, if you're having an argument about, who won the most World Series, the Yankees, you can get that kind of a debate resolved by asking the smart device. So there's, some of it's just fun. Some of it is helpful and informational. If you're like me, and when your brain gets kind of locked up on a question sometimes, it's easier, if I'm, doing dishes and my brain gets locked on one of these, I can get the answer and get my brain to shut up because it's got the answer and it goes away and gets happy again. So there's a lot of different things. You can control your home. Now, this is sort of an accessibility thing, but it's also just a convenience kind of thing. So you can set it up so that when you're coming home from work, right, you can either set it up as a routine, or you can, through your phone, tell the smart device to go ahead and adjust the temperature or turn the lights on, or maybe you forgot to turn the lights off. You can turn the lights off as you're going down the road, that kind of thing, just with your voice. So that is very helpful. And depending on, what you have in your home that is smart assistant aware, you get more or less control of different things. So that's helpful. something not everybody knows, mainly because I think it wasn't available in the beginning, but now it's pretty much a standard, and that is the ability to make and receive phone calls. So again, from an accessibility standpoint, huge win. But just from a convenience standpoint, right? If your, hands are busy doing something and somebody's calling, you can just have the device answer for you. Or if you're doing something, and you're like, oh, geez, I have a problem with so-and-so is going to call, you can do that while your hands are busy doing something else. So that is a really handy thing to have. There's also, depending on the device, this is specific to the Amazon thing. I haven't really seen it in the others, but you can set it up on different levels, and we'll get it into other things. So there's definitely the phone thing. And what that generally does is it connects to your mobile phone. But there are other options that we'll get into a little bit later. Reminders, alarms, right? So it's more than just the waking you up in the morning kind of thing. It can remind you, especially, if you're working from home, you're like me, like it can remind you to take a break, right? So you can say, set, remind me at, 3:15 to take a walk, right? Because I've been sitting in front of the computer too long and I lose track of time very often. So that's very handy for me. I also find it's helpful for me because I have a lot of different meetings. And again, I lose track of time. And I used to scramble at the last minute because it's like, oh, shoot, they're waiting for me. Now what I do is before I have a meeting, I set a reminder or an alarm, depending on the level of interruption I'm going to need. If I know I'm going to be really distracted, sometimes a reminder is not enough. I need the jarring alarm. And you can set the different types of alarms, like the sounds. So I'll say, set alarm for 2:50 because I have a 3 o'clock meeting, that type of thing. And now it helps me transition from the task I was doing into getting things done before the meeting, like letting the dog out, getting myself a drink or whatever. And then by the time I show up for the meeting, I'm present for the meeting. I am ready. I'm not distracted by anything. So that for me has been very, very helpful. And it probably will for some of you as well. Let's see, what else do I have on here? Okay, so now let's talk about, so things like also, watering the plants, it can remind you to do that kind of stuff. Taking your medication, very, very helpful. Like we all lose track of that kind of stuff. Especially if you're doing something like it takes a number of times a day. Like I recently had eye drops I had to put in like every 2 hours. My lifestyle does not lend itself to reminding me that. So I set reminders so that I kept remembering to do it because I wanted this thing to get resolved. And that was a big help. Okay. This for me is sort of like the top level. For a lot of people, this could be a really important piece of functionality that makes a smart assistant a no-brainer, a smart speaker, sorry. And that is getting help in an emergency. Now, there is a scale of things here, right? So some of them, you can actually use the phone call part of it to call 911, but not all of them will do that, mainly because they're worried about like too many false alarms and that kind of stuff. But there are different settings or tools or skills, depending on what it is that you're using. They call them different things that help you on different levels. So for example, one is it will listen for the sound of breaking glass or other things that would imply that, Murphy, no, I don't need a violation right now. Hey, sorry, hang on a second. That's all I need is a copyright violation because this toy makes noise. So it'll listen for something that would imply that your house is being broken into, right? So that can be a handy thing. There are free things like with Amazon. I think there's just a little thing that you can turn on for that. There are also skills or apps that you can add that offer different levels of service, which are very helpful. Some of them are free. Some of them have a one-time cost. Some of them have a monthly cost. Again, sliding scale depending on the level of service that you're looking for. There's also things like, this one is called like drop-ins, and that's one of the ones that Amazon, I think, is the only one that has right now. And the idea with that is you can give someone that you trust who also has an Amazon device the ability to just activate a conversation with you or listen in to hear if something's going on. So like if they're concerned they haven't heard from you in X number of times, they can turn on the speaker to see if you're calling out for help or something. Now, yeah, there's a certain level of creepy on this for some people, but there's also could be a lifesaver for other people. So there's that. I will say that when I first got the device that I started giving them away as gifts, basically, because I fell in love. I love sharing technology with people, and most of the people I get into are like, I'm never going to use this, and now they're in love with it too. But when I first started to do it, a couple of my nieces and nephews, we turned on that functionality so that they could jump in and say hi whatever they wanted, and that was a lot of fun. Now we've kind of burned out on it. It was more like when they were younger, but it was fun for a while. So basically, most of the time, what would happen was if they were bored after school, or they had a question with homework or whatever, they could just pop in and say, hey, can you help me with this? And I'd say whether I could or I couldn't. But it was fun to hear the little voices. There was also the pre-bedtime thing. Like there was a couple of them where we got into this routine that every night before they went to bed, they would jump on and say goodnight, which was adorable. I miss it. It was cute. So, there's stuff like that you can do. Then you can go to the next level, and there are different services that you can get. So, for example, there's this one in particular, Ask My Buddy is what it's called. And I didn't put it I'll put a link into the descriptions. I forgot to do that, but I'll do that in all the places. So this is a service, and it has a free or a paid level. So depending, you can go to the website and check it out. But basically what it'll do is when you give it the phrase, it will send text messages, emails, or phone calls to someone you choose in your contacts. And you can also have it connect you with first responders. So this is what I'm talking about when we're talking about, like, literally it could be a lifesaver. I won't kid you. I kind of wish I had pushed my dad harder on this. That's a whole other topic. We're not going to go into that. But it is the type of thing that you can get as a benefit from these types of tools that you don't necessarily have otherwise today. So that is super important. And then there's things just like getting organized, right? So I go through times where like I just forget, I'll put something down. And so I'll just have it, remind me of something. It's like, or I'll file something away, or I'll move something from where it was to someplace new because it's going to be better. But I know myself enough to know that I'm so programmed to look for it here that I'm going to go look for it. I'm going to forget I moved it, or I'm going to forget where I moved it to because it was a really good idea at the moment. And now I can't remember what I was thinking at that point. So what I do now is I tell one of and I will admit that I have the Google and the Amazon in my ecosystem, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I'll tell, usually it's Google because that's the one I rely on the most. Remind me that I put this there. And it'll say, okay, when you ask, I'll remind you this. So where you put your keys, where you put the mortgage paperwork, right? Where you put your insurance paperwork, stuff that you don't use a lot, but when you need it, you need it. It's a great way to save yourself that digging through everything, trying to find it, because you'll be able to find it right away. So that is another way it helps you stay organized. And like I said before, setting reminders, setting timers, setting alarms, all that kind of stuff. You can remind it. If you constantly are forgetting birthdays, you can tell it, remind me that, Joe's birthday is on this date. Then notify me 5 days in advance, and it will tell you, and you'll start to look like you're gotten so much smarter because you're remembering everybody's birthdays. And really, it's your device. Your device is basically becoming that personal assistant you can't afford to hire because they're reminding you of the things that you told them to remind them. So there is that. We're going to get into some concerns next, but I need to take a sip of water. So let me just tell you that if you need content ideas, you can go to yourtechcoach.com now, will both work, /content ideas to get the free ebook of 130 content ideas. It's great when you are just hitting that blank wall, that you hit that wall, you are staring at the blank page, and you need an idea. I built it for me. That's why it exists. And then I started to share it and people liked it. So it's there for you. It's free. You just put in your email address and it will send it to you. Just give me 1 sec. Okay, I should be able to keep going for a few more minutes. All right, so let's talk about concerns, right? Because this is the reality. Nothing in life in general doesn't have a pro and con side to it, right? So there's a lot. You just heard me wax poetic, right? And I admit it, right? I have the Amazon devices and I have the Google devices, and I'll explain why in a couple of minutes. But there are negatives to this, absolutely. So the first one that I like to warn people about when they ask me about this kind of thing is the setup and the installation process, right? Easy to buy them. There's lots of choices, and I'll help you explain how you would decide which is right for you in a little bit. But getting it set up takes some effort, right? First of all, you got to find some place to plug it in. That's usually the easiest part of the setup. And then you have to connect it to your Wi-Fi. Various levels of frustration on that. And then you've got to connect it generally to your phone in order to do things with it. Now, I will say, In the beginning, when these things first are coming out, setting it up was really frustrating. I will not kid you. However, they have refined this process over time. It has been years now since these things first came out, and they have definitely improved the process, but there is still a process you have to go through. So I just want to get that out there. After you get those kind of things done, I tell people just wait, use it for a couple of days at least. Then at that point, you'll be ready to maybe start to customize it, right? Go in and change settings, turn things on, turn things off, start setting up different routines for yourself, maybe adding new functionality to it. But you don't want to do all that stuff at once. It's a lot like when you get a new computer or a new phone or whatever. Like you start off with it, blank slate, get it working. And then as you're using it and you realize, I need to do this, I need to do that, that's when you can go and add those other things. Don't try to do it all at once. It becomes overwhelming. But that is the thing. This is the other big one, privacy, right? So if you just think about it from a purely logical standpoint, you're using these devices because you can talk to them and they respond or do something for you. In order for that to happen, they have to be listening for your request. They can't know, right? They're not sentient, right? They can't know and turn themselves on before you ask. They have to be on listening all the time. That bothers a lot of people. What I do kind of point out to everybody is, they say that while they're holding this, and this is listening to you all the time too, because this has a smart assistant if you're using anything newer, a newer device of any type. So it's funny how often people will be like, oh yeah, because they didn't actually connect those dots yet. I'm not saying that privacy is not an important issue, because obviously it is. But I just, this is a situation where you have to weigh the benefits, against the concerns. I will say that the smart devices come with a physical button you can hit to turn them off if you don't want them listening for a time period, which is fine. Just remember that they're not going to be able to respond to you or do anything for you again until you physically turn them back on. So, and they're not going to be able to remind you to do that because they're turned off. Makes sense, right? So that's just something else to be aware of. This also applies to the ones with the screen. So that's just, the standalone speakers, but this also applies to the ones that have the screen, because again, you can turn it off so that it can't listen to you. Now, a lot of people are like, I don't want the screen one because I don't want a camera. Well, a lot of the ones that are available now, you can choose between one that has a screen that has a camera and one that doesn't. If you do get one with a camera, again, there's usually a way that you can turn it off. Sometimes there's a little door on it. Sometimes it's a setting that you can turn on and off. Or you can go and for like $3, you can get these little slider doors. It's got this little thing and you just slide it so that it's either the camera's blocked or the camera's open. So again, there are levels of this and you can pick the one that is most comfortable for you. But yes, privacy is absolutely a concern. Let's just get it out there. This is one that not everybody thinks of, but I have started to point out to people as we're having this discussion because it's a reality. Getting one of these devices into your household may very well lead to you spending more money. Now, what am I talking about here? At the minimum, so you're going to start off and you're maybe going to be just getting information from it, maybe alarms, reminders, that kind of thing. And you can absolutely use it just for that forever and be perfectly happy. And that's fine. That's great. If you want to go to the next level, being able to control your lights, your locks, your thermostat, that type of thing, you may organically, as you need to replace a light bulb or you are going to replace your thermostat anyway because it's not working, that type of thing, you may decide that maybe you do want that functionality. So you may look at products to replace whatever it is that are assistant aware. Now you're going to have to look to make sure that it works with your assistant. At this point in time, if something is smart assistant compatible, it's pretty much generic, but you do want to double check. But it also means you're going to maybe pay a little bit more, right? So your light bulb that you're replacing, it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive if it's also a smart light bulb. If you're going to want to control things, via a plug, well, that's going to be not something that you're replacing so much, it's something you're buying, so that's an extra cost. The thermostat, when your thermostat goes and you go to replace it, the person who is replacing it for you, or if you're doing it yourself, will see, may suggest doing one that is aware, so that, smart assistant aware, so that you can control it that way, either through voice or through the routines you set up or whatever, but it's going to be a little bit more than one without that. So just be aware that, yes, you will probably end up spending extra money. The other way that you may end up spending more extra money, ask me how I know, is shopping. it maybe makes it a little bit too easy some days to order things. Now, this really is more of an Amazon thing, because what is Amazon, right? So there are certain things and certain ways that you can buy things. It's a little more awkward with Google, and from what I understand, also with the Apple devices. But with Amazon, not only is it really easy, but you can even get better deals. So, for example, there are times where you will get a better price. This is just Amazon shopping thing, but you will get a better price if you go to either your mobile device or if you voice order than if you do it from your desktop. And it's worth checking sometimes, because sometimes it can be as much as 10%. Sometimes it's a couple of pennies, but sometimes there are deals that are run that are specifically only available if you order it through voice, because they really want you to buy the device. So they're making it really attractive. And particularly as you get into the holiday season, I tend to see that more. It'll be interesting to see if they do it again, because with right now, I'm recording this in July 2020, so we're still having supply chain issues. So I don't know if it's going to happen again this season, but it is a pretty traditional thing for that type of thing to happen during that season. So just be aware. That makes it a little easier to buy things. Good or bad. Like I said, it can be a convenience too. It can be a help, for accessibility, kind of things. Somebody needs to reorder something. Makes it very easy. Another thing that is a concern for people, or a point of friction that they run into, is that it's a little awkward getting used to it. It's not completely natural language. It's not like talking to a person yet. It is much better than it was, and it will continue to get much better. But there are some techniques, that you have to learn to get the results you want. Now, the thing is, the device doesn't care. It'll sit there and try to answer you until you get it to give you the right information, until you find the right combination of words, whatever. So obviously there's no stress there. Don't let that stress you out, but just be aware that it does take a little time. With any of these things, there are training things so that it can learn to, get better with your voice. So you can run through those multiple times. You can also go in sometimes and adjust some settings, and then you can go online and you can get lists of, say this phrase to get device to do this. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can get that information until you get used to it, but it's not 100% natural language yet, but we're getting there. But frankly, to roll back a little bit to the privacy thing, yes, okay, it's listening to you. Yes, that means it's your voice and your requests are being recorded someplace. And yes, at some point, people are going to be listening to that. Now, are they specifically coming to listen to yours? Probably not, unless well, let's just say not. I mean, yeah, okay, there are ways that agencies can get a hold of it, but you also have control over that too. You can tell a device to delete everything that you've said, and it will do that. You can go to the website for it, and you can delete everything that's said. Now, yes, any of my tech friends are out there, yeah, but it's still on a server and still, yeah, okay, yes, it's been backed up someplace and all that. But for the most part, they've got routines that are going through and cleaning those out. They've got batch jobs running and all that, but it exists for a while. The other thing about this, which may or may not make you more comfortable, it depends on who you are, but in order for these things to get better, the people who work on this technology, the software, the hardware, and all that, have to have real data examples, right? Our real voices, our real requests, in order to make them better. So when they first came out, the biggest problem that people were running into, beyond the privacy thing in general, was just the fact that it didn't understand them, because the people building them only had their own voices to work with. And so that's what they tuned it to. And then if you had an accent or you spoke a different language or whatever, it started to fall apart pretty quickly. The reason that this has gotten better is because the more we interact with these things, the more they can see where they need to adjust things and improve things, which makes them better for us. So there's a symbiotic relationship between them being able to hear us and us getting what we need from these things. So just keep that in mind too. The other thing I wanted to mention is that if you have a weak or limited internet service, these things are using your internet in order to hit the computer and come back with the answer. And if you're going to have to keep that in mind, like if you have weak Wi-Fi, where you position the speaker, you may get better results in one part of the room than in the other, just because of the way that the Wi-Fi is working. If you are already in a situation where your internet bandwidth is struggling a little bit because of computers and gaming systems and all that, sometimes adding one more device trying to use the internet bandwidth can start to be a problem. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not a reason to not go ahead and use it. It's just information you should have in your head in case you need to go troubleshoot something. So for example, for the gamers or for the live streamers, if you are in that type of situation where you've got bandwidth, but maybe, you're kind of maxing out on everything, you may see when you're live streaming or when you're gaming lag. And so that's a good troubleshooting thing, is to go and maybe turn off some of the devices that maybe you aren't thinking about. Like, most of the phones switch to use your Wi-Fi when you're home. Other devices, other things that you're using. So by turning those off, if you start to see an improvement, then that's a problem, that you're starting to choke the bandwidth because there's too many things trying to use it at once. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not a big deal, but food for thought, shall we? All right, so next we're going to talk about, is a smart speaker right for you? And if so, how do you make that decision? But first, I do want to just let you know that you can sign up for the mailing list if you want to know what's coming down the pike, what the next shows are going to be. These are the folks who find out first what's going on. Do not worry. I do not give this list or sell this list to anybody. This is strictly a way for me to communicate with you and let you know what is going on. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions or comments or ideas for a show you want me to do, you can reach out to yourtechcoach.com. There's a form there. Just go ahead and fill it out. The only thing I ask is, if you are asking a question and you need a fast answer, I need you to give me an email address so I can get back to you. Otherwise, all I can do is cover it in a future show, which is great because it helps more people. But if you need a fast answer, that's not always convenient for you. You can also sign up if you want a consultation. I do that too. So you can go ahead and sign up for that. And we can do it as a call. So whatever works best for you. Alrighty. So, is a speaker right for you? Is a smart speaker right for you? It depends. So, if you only want music, if you only want to listen to music, podcast, audiobooks, and you don't need the voice control of that, then a Bluetooth speaker or a traditional speaker might be all you need, and you'd be perfectly happy and go do that. If any of the rest of it, the voice control, the answering the questions, the controlling your home, any of the assistance that it offers is interesting to you, then yes, a smart speaker is the way to go, because those other things won't do that for you. However, another thing to factor in, particularly if budget is an issue, you might be able to do a lot of what you need just with your phone, because like I said, most of them have the smart assistant on them. The only, trick here is that you need to be somewhere in range of your phone when you're asking it to do something. So like I said, when we started this, there is no single yes or no for everybody. It really does depend on your use case. And then once you do decide that, yes, you do want it, you want to give it a try, then your next decision is, do you want just a speaker, or do you want a speaker with a display? And again, that is about the type of benefit you're looking to get from it. If you just want it to answer things, control things, play things for you, audio, you don't need the screen. If the idea of being able to see things on the screen is helpful for you, then that's another way to go. You also get the added benefit of, with the screen, like it can play like YouTube videos for you or any online videos. I ended up getting one for the kitchen because I've gotten into sous vide cooking. And it's really nice to have not only have the device tell me what to do with a particular recipe, but be able to see it. And sometimes there's a little video that, shows a technique or whatever. And it's great because, when your hands are covered in flour or oil or whatever, you can do all that hands-free. And so it's really handy for me to have that in the kitchen because I can see it. A lot of people that I know are also putting them in the kitchen because it can, in addition to playing, just the audio, it can also play video. So like while you're eating your breakfast, you can watch the news or watch a movie or whatever. So again, you need to look at it in context of what it is you're looking to get from it, and that will help you to figure out what is the right thing for you. All right. Is there anything else? I think that covers it. I just had another fleeting thought, but I think I covered that up front, so I think we're good because I've done this twice already tonight. So there you go. So, like I said, I'm doing this July 2022. We are going into Prime Day, which is 2 days, whatever. But then we'll get into the holiday season. So this is the type of thing that you're going to want to look at. There's going to be deals on, I'm sure. Particularly Amazon with the Amazon devices. They always push those on Prime Day and Black Friday. So, but it is something to think about, or as a gift for somebody, that maybe it would help them with things around the house or whatever. There are definitely strong use cases for this type of device. So it is something to consider. And if you're enjoying this, I do hope that you will come back. You can watch it live. I'm here every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, but it's also available for replay. So if you catch live, you can jump into the chat and talk with everybody and you ask questions or whatever. But you can also do that in the comments. So if you have any comments, questions, if you need help with something, go ahead and throw that in the comments wherever you're watching it, and I will get back to you. And as I said earlier, you can always reach out to me on the website as well. All right. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate it. If you want to do that, like, subscribe, something, that helps too. It definitely helps the channel. But frankly, I'm just happy to be able to help wherever I can. And I will be here again next week. Till then, I hope you have a great weekend and all is well. Bye.